All right, welcome back to the Zoned In podcast, everybody. As always, I'm your host, Joey Meatballs. Alongside me, I got Big Mo, KP, and Weezo. And today we're going to bring you some sports from the last week. Even though we missed two, we'll talk about a little bit. Don't you worry, we'll get there. But we're going to start with this week first because that's what's more important, living in the present. We're going to kick it off with our MLB players and teams of the week. To start off, we're going to go with player. My player was a guy who, had a pretty good year 2 years ago. Last year had a down year. Signed a 1-year prove-it deal this year over in Washington. And he's doing good. Eddie Rosario. This week he had 3 home runs, 3 stolen bags in 5 games played. 354 WRC plus, 1.133 slugging percentage, 0.7 WAR, and a 6.86 WOBA. So the WOBA, the WRC plus, and the WAR were all best in the MLB this week. WAR was also tied alongside of I think Aaron Judge and one other player I'm blanking on. But with that being said, that's a very good week for Eddie Rosario. Very good week for the Nationals. Even though they dropped 2 games to my Red Sox, they still had a good week. He still had a good week regardless, and he's been having a good season so far. Big Mo, player of the week.
So I have to go with the big man, the bear himself, Mr. Ozuna. Throughout the past 6 games they've played this week, 21 at-bats. He's had 4 runs, 10 hits, 20 total bases, 3 homers, and 8 RBIs throughout just the past week. So he's been doing very good. He's the center front for our offense on the Braves. I forgot what exactly he was leading the league in. What was it?
I think it was RBIs. I know RBIs earlier in the year.
Earlier
I
in
think
the
he's close.
I think it's still RBIs.
Well.
I'm pretty sure it's still RBIs.
It might still be RBIs, yeah. But
he had a pretty healthy season on that.
Yeah, he's been doing great this year. He had an absolute tear against the Red Sox.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have a tear against us, unfortunately.
Hey, not this year. Our pitching's been good.
Kibby, player of the week.
All right. Well, Marcell Ozuna, his success couldn't happen to a better person. Now moving on, my favorite player, one of my favorite players in the MLB is my player of the week, and it is Aaron Judge. This week from the 5th to the 12th, that's what I use. It's Sunday to Sunday. 306 WRC plus, 3rd best in the MLB and best in the American League. It also accumulated a 0.9 FWAR, along with a 20% walk rate, and an average higher than his BABIP. Also a 1 dot slugging, 609 WOBA, 4 homers, 8 RBIs, and 31 plate appearances. So he was fantastic for the Yankees this week. Was a big reason why we had such a great week. So.
Yeah, he's been having, it's Aaron Judge. He's gonna do his thing. All right, Weezo, player of the week.
All right, my player of the week, we're gonna go out to Pennsylvania for Pittsburgh and O'Neal Cruz, the Cruz missile. He was certainly bombing a few of those this week. Hitting 2 home runs, 6 RBIs for a 274 WRC plus. Delivered a pretty big hit in this debut of the much looked forward to debut of Paul Skeens, helping the Pirates to a win in that game. And overall batting for 421 on the week. Overall very strong showing. He's definitely one of the highlights of that young lineup. He's been a large portion of their offense this year, and for a team that's barely hanging on after a pretty good start.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy, that he'll be a really good player.
Potential's through the roof for him.
Oh yeah. It's like him and Ellie are like this same player. It feels like.
Cruz has a bit more pop, but
yeah, but I view him as very, very similar styles. Which is anyway.
Yeah.
Moving on to team of the week. My team of the week is a team I personally strongly dislike. Couldn't tell you why, just do. But It's out in California. They stole my favorite player. Well, yeah, I guess my favorite player at the time on the Red Sox from me, signed into an 11-year deal for some reason, and decided, we're just going to put him at second base and now DH. And that is Xander Bogaerts. Oh, wait, no, not Xander Bogaerts. The player I'm talking about is Xander Bogaerts. The team I'm talking about is the San Diego Padres. They had a great week this week. They went 4-2, which on paper, sounds pretty average, above average, But the teams that they beat were the Dodgers and the Cubs, two very good teams, especially the Dodgers. So they won the series against the Dodgers 2-1, and they won the series against the Cubs 2-1. That's all you can really ask from your team right there. I mean, first of all, series win against the Dodgers is huge, and against the Cubs, that's a tough team right there. That's a battling team. They're going to be around come playoff time, and for the Padres to win a game like that now is a very big step from where they were last year, where they kind of fell apart against teams like the Cubs. So down the road, I think that's a big positive outlook for Padres fans, and I think could lead to a lot of success. Big Mo.
I can tell you why you don't like the Padres. Manny Machado.
Oh, that too. But we won't get into why I hate Manny Machado right now. Big Mo.
So my team, I decided, since I was a little lacking this week, was the Braves. They're 4-2 throughout the previous week. 6 games. Started off with a loss to the Dodgers, 1-5, which was tough for me because the Dodgers are a really good team, and that would be a team I would have wanted them to get a win over. They went 2-0 against the Red Sox. In a series that I wanted them to go 3-0 against the Mets, they came short in the end, 4-3 in the last game of the series. Things that happen all the time in series like that, going down. But when it was a 4-2 win and a 4-1 win beforehand, you would have thought they would have been able to close it up towards the end. But they're at 24-13 now, the second best in the NL East, and I think the 4th best in the National League in general standings wise. So they were dipping a little bit, but they're holding on, and hopefully we can finish the year better than the Phillies.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously with the injuries to starting pitching in Atlanta, it's going to be an uphill battle. However, it's the Braves. They always find a way. They're a good team. They'll battle no matter what. Chris Sale's been pitching lights out, especially against Boston, which he apologized for. So no harm, no foul. We always forgive. We love Chris Sale. It wasn't his fault.
I forgive Chris Sale. I forgive Chris Sale, but I'm never forgiving his bike.
I mean, who bikes in Boston to get lunch? I mean, it's not a hilly city, man. But like, you found the one hill to flip over your bike on. Like, come on. All right, KP.
All right, so similar to Max, for my team of the week, I went with my favorite team, the New York Yankees. I think they had a very good week. I went 5-2. They started off last Sunday with a series sweep over the Tigers, and they were able to secure that. And then the Astros came to town. Always a tough series for the Yankees. But they were able to win, I believe, before the last game of the series. They won their last 9 games against the Astros. But then they dropped the final game, were able to win that series, scoring 10 and 9 runs in the first 2 games. Then they went down to St. Pete this weekend in the Mother's Day series against the Tampa Bay Rays. Very close first game. The Yankees were in control for most of it, and then Clay Holmes almost blew it, but he still hasn't given up an earned run this year, so good for him. Was able to get out of it. The second game wasn't great. We ended up losing that one, but yesterday, 5 home runs, won 10-6. Got close towards the end, but were able to pull away. And they also recorded a 151 WRC plus this week, which was best in baseball by a wide margin. It was also top 5 in runs scored. So very good week for the Yankees.
Oh yeah, Yankees. They look like a force to be reckoned with this year. We'll see if they can beat the Orioles and win the division. But it's the Yankees. Sometimes they struggle later in the season.
Yeah,
usually early in the season, but
no. I'm in the playoffs.
It's
All right,
usually the
Weezo.
midway.
Oh, well, that
All
that-
right.
that-
Anyway,
okay.
for my team of the week, I'm going to go with the Kansas City Royals. I am loath to admit that I am wrong about something, but I may have been less correct than usual regarding
You
my
know who said the
prediction
Royals are going to be
for
good?
Central.
Me, Carl.
I'll give Carl credit for that one. Anyway, they
I
looked
was the one who
very
said
good
it
this week.
first.
They looked very good this week. Riding off the backs of great pitching performances. Winning 5 games and losing 2 against Milwaukee and Los Angeles. Los Angeles is mid this year. They still have some lineup pieces, but they're not very good. But Milwaukee has been a very good team. And to hold that lineup to such little runs, only lose 1 game in that series, it's pretty impressive. I'm really struck by so far this year is the depth of their starting pitching rotation. The combination of Singer, Waka, Ragans, and Lugo as starting pitching is deadly, and that could translate to playoff success potentially, as we've seen in recent years how important starting pitching is to the playoffs. But I mean, honestly, overall, just really good. The name of the game for offense for them has namely been Salvador Perez and Salvador Perez alone. He's been very good so far this year.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
to my dismay, Salvador President, I've been a Salvi disliker for a while now. Just
yeah.
because of
Like
his very high strike rate. Oh, sorry, Joey.
I was just gonna say, like I said earlier, on an earlier episode in the podcast, it's going to be an uphill battle for Kansas City to go out and win the division to make playoffs because they're not going to make it as a wild card, especially with like divisions like the AL East
no.
or even the West. You know, has some teams making some noise out there, like the Mariners, or even Texas, whoever ends up winning that division. But so it's going to be an uphill battle for the Royals. Like I said, Bobby Witt and Pasquantino, they need to stay hot. They started out pretty hot, and now they're kind of cooling down, which it's not sustainable to hit as well as they were.
Right.
But they can bounce back, I'm sure. They're young guys.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And then starting pitching, their starting pitching is a lot like it reminds me a lot like Boston's right now, where they also start out very hot, but I feel like you could start to see some of those guys cool off, especially the guys like Lugo or Waka who have some age to them, where they might not be able to go as deep into the season.
I don't know.
Lugo
about
is
that.
not that old. He doesn't have that many innings on his arm.
Oh, he was a reliever for a while.
Career-wise,
right?
he was a reliever. Got transitioned to a starter. It was either last year or the year before.
Right.
And
I think it was last year.
He has a very, very spinny curveball, and me likey. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, I think the AL Central is wide open for whoever can take it. It's going to be a bloodbath between the.
I think it's between 3 teams.
Yeah, I think any actual MLB team in that division can win it.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I
not
think
the
White Sox have a
Or the
better
Tigers.
chance. The White Sox post Tommy Pham are much better than the Detroit Tigers. So we'll have to see what happens there.
Nick, just admit you're wrong about the Tigers. It's okay.
No, I refuse. It's not
All right.
over.
All right, we're gonna move on now to NBA playoffs. Yeah. First, it's been a pretty wild playoffs. A lot of really good games. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like every game that I end up watching is like a blowout for one team or the other. I feel like there's not as many close games as we usually have. But with that being said, I'll kind of hit the current series we got. Celtics Cavs. I think it's very apparent this series, especially game 2, the Celtics are missing Kristaps Porzingis. The Celtics were very, very open on defense in the paint game 2, getting outscored by the Cavs 60-40. And if I'm the Cavs, the way you beat Boston without Kristaps Porzingis is penetrating the paint. Our tallest player down there is going to be Al Horford 80% of the time, and he's 82 years old and 6'9". He can't jump like he used to. And guarding a 7-footer like Evan Mobley, you should be attacking the paint a lot. If I'm the Cavs, I mean, they're still a good team without him. Regardless, the Celtics can battle, as you saw in game 1 and 3 and game 5 of the Heat series. So I'm not too worried about the Celtics, especially now that game 4 has started and the Cavs are without Donovan Mitchell, which is very big for Boston. However, if you're a Celtics fan, you know, as I know, early in the season, especially the regular season, when a team's missing their star player, we love to lose those games. I.e., look at Atlanta. The breakout of DeJounte Murray really took full form against Boston twice. But yeah, thoughts on Celtics Cavs, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I watched game 3 in whole, and it seemed like definitely the Kristaps not being or not being able to play due to injury was very 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 tough, and it was very apparent for the Celtics. But it was also very apparent that the Cavs were missing out on Jared Allen. I mean, defensively, especially, there was some times where Mobley was not on the floor. I believe he was a little bit banged up and didn't play much of the third quarter, I believe it was. And the Celtics were able to really score at will. And it was if I was not a Celt or rooting for the Celtics, it would have been tough to watch. They went on a very long run, and they were able to attack the paint a lot. But for the Cavs, what seemed to work in the first half, especially to keep the game close, was the pick and rolls with Mitchell, or either Mitchell or Garland and Mobley. I think it was probably more Garland on the pick and rolls, and Mobley was able to attack the paint a lot, and Garland was able to as well once they got some ISO opportunities. But it kind of seemed like there was something off with Mitchell in the second half because he was so dominant in the first half, and he kind of fell off a little bit, and so did the whole team's performance.
One thing with Mitchell, I noticed he's a big fan of more instead of that pick and roll. He'll set up the pick and roll a lot too. He'll drive to the rim, take the rim. Don't get me wrong. He did a lot in game 2. Game 3, I kind of noticed more of a pick and pop strategy from him, and I don't know if that's because he was feeling a little worn down, a little injured or something. And obviously, a jump shot's a lot less straining on the body than driving to the rim and getting hit by another player or something like that. So, Big Mo, Weezo. Oh, sorry, Carl. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say that, yeah, it seemed like he was doing a lot more either ISO ball or like pick and pops with Strus, like you said.
Yeah. All right, Weezo, Big Mo, thoughts?
On the terms of the Cavs and Donovan Mitchell, when I was watching game 3, the most recent one, I saw a lot of one of the big things that had the Celtics struggling in the first quarter when Mitchell was hot and into the second was they would start the defensive series with Drew Holiday on Donovan, which is a great matchup, which I think is the matchup they should keep if Donovan is in the game. But then they would force a switch where then Donovan would go onto Horford guarding him from more of an inside position, and that pretty much like opened up completely every 3-point shot that Donovan Mitchell had, and he was feeling hot. So I thought that in the second half was where the Celtics, from a coaching perspective, kind of saw that and adjusted to it. Obviously Mitchell not feeling a certain way adds to that as well, but I feel like that could have been a more ugly game or a lot closer than it finished out if that strategy they were running with had continued, because it honestly looked like if Horford had to keep reaching from a jump inside to try and get out to the perimeter and stop that 3, it looked like Mitchell may have had like 50 points if that had kept going because he was just hitting them nonstop.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of that, to your point, Max, comes from the Atlanta Celtics series where what's his name? I'm sorry. DeJounte Murray, I'm sorry. Just complete mind. DeJounte Murray just kept switching on to Horford and hit, or Kristaps, or someone who's a little less mobile on defense for a guard, and just working them. And I think that those games help them prepare for a guy like Mitchell or like Garland, even who do that quite frequently.
In terms for the Hawks, it was more from mid range because of Murray's bag. But I would say it's the same type of defensive scenario, just from a perimeter perspective, which is a lot more difficult seeing the position that the C's on defense put their centers in.
Right. Weezo, thoughts?
So it's definitely I think gonna be an uphill rest of the series for the Cavs with the injuries to Donovan Mitchell, as he is a very obviously a critical part of their offense and their entire game plan. They still have a chance. I think the Celtics have the potential to be their own worst enemy on any given night. But I think ultimately the Celtics are going to pull this one off. They're just overall the better team, even without Tingus Pingus. Although it is a pretty close game currently right now. At the time of recording here, it is currently halftime in game 4. And it is a 5-point lead for the Celtics, in which Max Strus is 5 for 6 from 3-point, which is quite an interesting game plan from them. But I don't know if that's sustainable for another half. So we might be about to see the Celtics take a commanding 3-1 lead.
Listen, the media messed up. They pissed off Jason Tatum, and he's hot.
The Knicks
23
are going
points
to
at
beat you
halftime.
anyway.
What's that?
The Knicks are going to beat you anyway.
What?
With what big men?
Are the Knicks even going to advance?
Brother,
Nick, who's
the
guarding
the
Jason
Knicks
Tatum?
is for the Knicks, the Celtics is a nightmare matchup
Who's
with a
guarding
healthy
Jason Tatum,
Kristaps, who's supposed to come back in the Eastern Conference Finals.
But
Mhm.
Jalen
Like, who's
Brunson-
literally resting this series to play?
Drew Holiday.
That is a 4-0 Celtics win, if that. if
Yeah,
they
it's
advance.
honestly.
Well, I don't know about
the
that.
Cavs is a harder matchup
Calm
for.
down. Let's
for
calm
the
down about
Celtics.
4-0, Big Mo.
No. That's
No,
Fair
I mean
one.
the Celtics really
Gentlemen's
they
sweep.
need Derek White to step it up on the offensive end like he was doing earlier
Oh, yeah.
in the
Currently, yeah.
playoffs. Last game he was horrendous. I mean, offensively, he just did
He's
not
not-
look
yeah.
good out there. He was like stumbling all over himself, was not taking good shots, and he has
Mm.
0 points at half. So
Yeah, he is
Not-
not
not very
shooting the
good.
ball. He's not shooting the ball much this game in general. Which
Yeah.
I mean, if you're struggling, I don't want you shooting too much. I want you to shoot to help break out your slump. But regardless, we'll move on to the next series. This is a nice transition. Next series, which is Knicks Pacers. Two teams that they're very hot and cold. I'll say, because the Knicks, they were rolling. They were rolling right into the playoffs. They were on a huge win streak. They were not win streak. I'm sorry. They were on a huge, just momentum push all the way up until game 3. And you know what happened? The Pacers battled back and won. Tyrese Halliburton looked like Tyrese Halliburton from the first half of the season that won the in-season tournament. This Pacers team, they finally remembered how to play basketball. Siakam, Miles Turner all looked good that game. And once again, they looked good in game 4, blew out the Knicks. I mean, this Knicks team was supposed to be hot. They were going to win off the power of friendship, college teammates, et cetera, et cetera. The story. Game 4, DiVincenzo looked atrocious. Brunson didn't have that great of a game. I mean, I knew that the Knicks' success of DiVincenzo wasn't sustainable, but I didn't expect Brunson to cool off as hard as he did the past 2 games, which can make it a very interesting series heading back to MSG, which is always a tough place to win. But, if you're the Pacers, you did your job. You won your games at home. That's what you're supposed to do. And you're battling. You're fighting. You're still alive. You're still dancing. What's your guys' thoughts?
I thought really, watching that whole game, on Mother's Day, that game 4 in Indiana, the Knicks just played god-awful defense. I mean, they were slashed from both the perimeter and inside. Their shooting percentage themselves as a team was below 35%. And their 3-point percentage was about 18.9. And compared to the Pacers, 56.8 field goal percentage and 45.2 point percentage from 3, you're just not winning that game with those stats in play. So really a very poor effort from the Knicks. I mean, we could see this from their stars, mass amount of minutes played and all that, and maybe this could be the lead to why they're cooling off. But in a situation like this where you now give up those home games and let them tie, it's a really dire situation that they have to either snap out of and fight back through and get back to a positive shooting percentage, because if they want to win this series, that kind of outcome of a shooting percentage and percentage from field goals cannot happen because that was god awful. I mean, they were throwing up like 5 missed shots in a row, like every couple possessions. It was terrible.
I mean, yeah, let's like you can live and die by the 3 ball if you're the Warriors, but and the Knicks haven't really done it all season because Brunson is a great penetrator. But I mean, this series especially they've been living off the back of DiVincenzo coming up huge, hitting some threes for them, and yeah, it's not sustainable. Especially because I love Dante DiVincenzo. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a good player, but he's not prime Klay Thompson. He's not going to come out there and be Game 6 Klay every single game for you. This is not going to happen. KP, Weezo?
Yeah. So I'm the I know when Julius Randle first got injured, there was conversation about the Knicks being better without Julius Randle, but it's really hurting them right now. I mean, just looking at their lineup for that last game, I mean, who is their number 2 scoring option? Like, you can't depend on Dante DiVincenzo to be the number 2. Josh Hart, that's not his role. He's not going to be their number 2. Miles McBride, he's coming off the bench. He has some scoring upside, but he's not a fit in that lineup. They're missing Julius Randle so bad. They need Jalen Brunson to take 30 shots and make 20 of them to even have a chance in the game. Like, they're putting everything on Jalen Brunson. He's probably exhausted. I mean, no wonder he's doing this. I mean, he's got to come out every other night and put up 40 points for them to have a shot. It's really tough. I mean, the Pacers are a much deeper team. Their rotation's really good. But yeah, the Knicks with their injuries. I mean, you can depend on DiVincenzo to give you a couple threes in like in a close situation maybe. He's a very good role player, but he's not going to be their top scoring option. And if the Knicks aren't able to close this one out, I think it's going to be a big offseason for them to try to add another scorer to the team, or maybe some more efficient players.
For sure. I mean, I think the Knicks, they're a few pieces away. I don't think this will be their year, especially with the injuries to Randall. I mean, but I want to see it happen, especially with the guys they got there, because I think it's, like I said earlier in the podcast, a different episode. I think it's awesome that they got the college guys back together, the college game back together. That won 2 championships, went to 3-1-2 over at Villanova. Like, how often do you see that? You don't. It's a cool thing to see. Weezo, thoughts?
So it's really been unfortunate for the Knicks. It seemed like at one point, like when they're up 2-0 on the Pacers, they beat the Sixers in a good series. It seemed like this was going to be their year of fate. It's just that at every turn they've just been starting to get clobbered by injuries and other problems. Like with Julius Randle going out with injury, that was certainly a devastating one. And now Mitchell Robinson, who has been an absolute dog for the Knicks in the trenches, he's out for the rest of the playoffs now. He's just that's a huge loss for them. They don't have the height to necessarily make up for what other teams have. And the Pacers have always been the deeper team. They have a very deep lineup. Obviously, Tyrese Halliburton has emerged as a superstar. Miles Turner can get a lot of things done, and T.J. McConnell remains underrated as always. But overall, it's gone from the Knicks had like a clear path to the Eastern Conference Finals to now it's very muddy because of these injuries. They need OJ Anunoby to get healthy fast if they want to have a chance.
Nick, do you like TJ McConnell because he's white?
What?
I don't think he's underrated. I think TJ McConnell's perfectly rated. He had a strong game 4 because he actually got minutes. I mean, he didn't play at any other game during the series. So
your average bench player.
Yeah. I don't think the Knicks are really lacking in size because of Julius Randle being gone. I think defensively they're fine. It's more offensively.
It's just
Precious Achiuwa is a very good defender. That's why he's out there. guarding Siakam. That's not a terrible matchup. But Mitchell Robinson being out is tough. Hartenstein's solid. He's actually a pretty efficient player, but he's not what you want out there.
All right, moving right on along here. We got the Mavericks and the Oklahoma City Thunder. I was a big Thunder supporter going into the playoffs. I thought they were going to be amazing, and they're going to roll through the Mavs, as I said in an earlier episode. But as Carl, Big Mo, and I think Weezo said in that same episode, their inexperience will catch up to them. And oh boy, has it. I mean, not that, what are they down? 2-1? That's nothing crazy. Or is it 2-2 now?
2-1.
2-1. Okay.
They play game 4 tonight.
No, tonight's Nuggets Thunder. Or Nuggets T-Wolves.
They played last night. It's Mavs Thunder tonight.
Okay. Anyway, not that being down 2-1 is absolutely absurd, because it's not. I mean, the Thunder is still a good team. They can still battle and win. But, I mean, doing that in Dallas is going to be a lot harder than it is going to be in OKC. With that being said, Shea's a very good player. So is Chet. I'm not going to speak about Josh Giddey. But the Mavs, the Mavs are looking really good. Kyrie, the media wants you to hate him. I want to hate him because he left Boston, but I can't. He's a likable player now. I don't know what to tell you. He's a likable player. And I mean, Luka, you can't. It's hard to hate Luka. I mean, he's just his personality. It's funny, to be honest. And it's he got injured, balled out, and still won. I mean, you can tell he's injured. He's limping around the court. I don't know exactly what the injury was. You guys might. I didn't watch too much of the Mavs OKC series, but is that going? My biggest question is, as we progress later in the series, will Luka's injury catch up to him and slow him down and that offense down? Because without him, that offense is going to be a lot more stagnant, because Kyrie can only do so much. What do you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, well, you said you were not going to talk about Josh Giddey. I am. He has been an absolute liability defensively, and they refuse to take him out of the rotation. He's been poor offensively and one of the worst defenders of this entire playoffs, if not the worst. I believe, plus minus isn't the best stat. I believe it was game 2 where his plus minus was like minus 20, and everybody else's was positive, much closer to positive despite a loss. So whenever he was on the floor, they gave up a lot of points. And they will not adjust, and they keep putting him in the lineup. And a lot of Thunder fans are very mad about that.
I'll tell you what, Carlos, not only a liability defensively and offensively, but also legally. Big Mo.
I mean, I saw this coming. I saw it coming from when the playoffs started. I was the presser on the experience issue with the Thunder. And unfortunately, for such a great young team, it's catching up in this series, and their only saving grace will possibly be how this injury affects Luka Doncic. Because with him and Kyrie in the game on a driving force on a good night, with all the surrounding pieces the Mavs have gotten in the rotation, this is a very scary team. They're very scary guard dynamic. Yeah. I also am an avid PJ Washington enjoyer when he plays basketball. I'm finally glad he got off the Hornets and he's able to play in this playoff series and the playoff series before that against the Clips. He was a big part of that too. But we've seen Luka play injured before, and it hasn't really held him back from scoring like 40 a clip. Still, like he always does, but in a situation where it might have to be game on the line, or pushing the pressure to keep the Thunder off balance to try and push the score up, we could see that take effect depending on the severity of the injury, or how much it lingers, or how much it affects his play style. So because we know he's got that that old man kind of slow progression type play style, so maybe it won't bother him that much through his shot progression, but definitely in keeping up the tempo and getting those plays through in the paint and to the corners. He could definitely play a role. But Kyrie is amazing at basketball. So wherever Luka will slack, Kyrie will pick up in this series,
Right.
and I believe in that confidently because he has just looked phenomenal, like he did back in Cleveland. It's beautiful.
My biggest concern with Luka's injury was never his offense, just because his change of direction is not that fast to begin with. So if his injury, I don't think will affect that too much. My bigger concern was his defense, which I already kind of viewed as a little bit of a liability of his, just because he's not that quick at changing direction or that quick in general. So that was my biggest concern on how the injury would affect him. Who's he guarding though? He's not guarding SGA, right? No, not even know. No,
they're probably rotating, but he was very good as a one-on-one defender in the Clippers series. So I believe he had one game where he basically like shut down James Harden one-on-one. Right. So
right, and that was him healthy. But during the regular season, he was wasn't a total liability. I won't say that, but his poor or his below average defense showed, I think, personally. Weezo?
Yeah, so I think ultimately the Mavs do have an edge, especially because of the experience, like Max said. Kyrie's been to his fair share of playoffs. By this point, Doncic has been to the playoffs several times now. This Thunder team is very very young, very not super experienced in the playoffs. Shai is doing his best to carry them. He's dropped near 30, over 30 or nearly 30 in every game of this series so far. And I wouldn't go so far as to say the Thunder have zero chance of taking this series. Obviously, a lot of things could happen that could go in their favor. They're a very deep and talented team. But overall, I think the Mavs just ultimately have the advantage. They have a surprising amount of depth at the forward and center positions, actually, with Lively. They have Gafford, from my very own Washington Wizards. They have PJ Washington playing out of his mind in the last game. And if they can keep that up, I think that they can take the series in 6 games, realistically. The games have been close, but they've been decisive to the Mavs.
I mean, I'm not surprised with PJ Washington's performance at all. I mean, unlike a lot of players on that team, he really needs that money. I mean, most of his contract's going to Brittany Renner anyway. So,
all right, we're gonna move on to our last playoff series here. Arguably the most exciting one, in my opinion, at least. T-Wolves Nuggets. This is a series I am crowning this the best series so far. Because, you start out, you thought it looked like the T-Wolves are going to run away with it. The way they were, like, bullying Jokic down low and the way they were pressuring Jamal Murray, it looked like, the T-Wolves finally figured out with the team to figure out the Nuggets. It really did. But games, then, they won games 1 and 2, if my memory is correct. But then they dropped games 3 and 4 because the MVP reigned supreme. He came back, he bounced back as Jokic tends to do. He returned to Nikola Jokic. Jamal Murray also was huge help in those 2 games. One thing that I saw him do in game 3, especially in the third quarter, and he was scoring in the third quarter. I'll give him, credit where credit's due. He was scoring. But one of his biggest flaws just as a player in general is he loves to try and play iso ball, and I feel like the Nuggets have sort of strayed away from that. I mean, granted, Jokic wasn't on the floor when he was doing this because of foul trouble, but I would like to see Murray try to stay away from some of that iso ball, work with the team, work with the T-ball, because that's really their identity as a team, in my opinion. And then the T-Wolves, Anthony Edwards is Michael Jordan with a 3-point shot. What can I say? He had the crazy dunk in game 4 that, Drew Holiday's brother, Justin Holiday. Yeah, Justin Holiday just got out of the way. He wanted nothing to do with it. Nothing. And I don't blame him. Neither would I. Yeah, but it's hard not to like Anthony Edwards. I mean, and Carl Anthony Towns is also, he's been dominating. Rudy Gobert, he's going to make his presence known as he did in games 1 and 2. And he kind of played a big role in getting Jokic into foul trouble as well. So, we'll see how the series progresses, but I am very interested in that series because it's not like the T-Wolves got cold because Anthony Edwards still dropped 44 in the loss, and he's been their guy. So it's not like they got cold. So I'm going to be very interested to see how it goes going back to Minnesota now. So we'll see. No, Minnesota? Oh, no, sorry.
Denver.
I'm sorry. Denver. Thank you. Denver.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm going to see how I'm going to be interested. It's going to be interesting. What do you guys thoughts?
I think this is probably the most interesting game 5. But I mean, the first 4 games were all pretty much blowouts. I mean, they were definitely interesting. But I mean, the story for the Timberwolves has been that second option. Who is going to be their reliable second option? In the first half of game 3, it was Karl Anthony Towns. He had a phenomenal first half, cooled off in the second half, and had not a great game 4 at all. So I saw a lot of people on the old Twitter saying that Karl Anthony Towns needs to play much better for them to have a chance to win the series. And yeah, I mean, especially with Rudy Gobert coming back, Karl Anthony Towns is defensive. He doesn't have to focus as much on his defensive side of the ball, but also he's at the 4, and Aaron Gordon had a phenomenal game 4. He's really been he was really the X factor last night. And I don't even think Jokic has been really that good. I mean, obviously his playmaking has definitely been like the huge part of their offense, but I don't think he was their leading scorer in game 3 or 4. I believe it was Jamal Murray in game 3 and Aaron Gordon in game 4. So it's really just been the other options of that Nuggets team and just showing how deep they are that they were able to really blow the Timberwolves out in game 3 and in spite of Anthony Edwards' performance in game 4.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote this down. I forgot to mention before. I think, I kind of view this as a battle of the big men. And right now the T-Wolves are winning that battle. And I just think it's just a cool thing to see because you don't see that a ton anymore just because matchups wise, like if we got to watch like a Jokic Embiid final, a Sixers Nuggets final, maybe like last year. Grant, if Embiid was he was healthy, yeah. If the Sixers were to make it, that would have been really exciting. I mean, for me personally, just because those are the 2 guys that are always in the MVP conversation. So to finally see like Jokic kind of meet his match is really it's entertaining. It's entertaining. Big Mo, Weezo.
I mean, when it comes down to the Timberwolves' success, I think they're one of the few teams, not only in the West but in the entire NBA that play with some of the most physicality out of any basketball team. And I feel like even with the way the Heat were last year, they were a little bit physical of a team, but that's more pressed by Jimmy Butler than the entire team itself. I feel like the entirety of the Timberwolves personifies physical, old school and new school basketball, and just the way Anthony Edwards plays. I mean, somebody needs to do a DNA test. They need to get it back to me as soon as possible. That is Michael Jordan's son. Nobody can convince me otherwise. But yeah, I just don't think the Nuggets, I think that's what got them the first 2 games. I don't think they were ever pressed with that in a playoff situation where you're getting physically pressed like every offensive possession. And, the Timberwolves really bring that. The defensive player of the year 4-time is starting the show with Gobert back. And, with Cat healthy, like the Timberwolves, I've always said at full health is a scary ass team in the West. And in still my opinion, it's their series to lose, but the Denver Nuggets are also champions. So they could very much take it into their account and get hot and press it as well if they match the physicality that the Timberwolves present. And Jokic gets back to form and finds a way to push through Gobert's solid defense, and keep making those playmaking shots to Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon to keep everybody involved. You got to keep the pressure on, because if you let it cool off, the Timberwolves are going to take it and run. They're going to take it and run.
Yeah, I think a big key of the Nuggets' success past 2 games, is one, coaching, and your role player stepping up. I would say Jamal Murray is a little bit more than a role player, a lot more than a role player. But like Aaron Gordon stepping up last game was huge in Game 4, and it's just coaching adjustments offensively and defensively, like game plan adjustments, like it's not running. Excuse me, not running the entire offense through Jokic for Game 4 was, obviously it was a big change that I noticed. And then on the T-Wolves side, it looks like they've been prepping for the Nuggets all year. They knew where they were going to be. They knew the team they had to beat, and they were ready for them. Games 1 and 2, and Coach Malone of the Nuggets made a great adjustment. We'll see how the T-Wolves adjust. We'll see. Carl, Weezo?
Yeah, just final thoughts on the Nuggets series. I just thought that it was interesting that Gobert is out the first 2 games, and the T-Wolves play really well defensively, and then he comes back and they're not. I think that has less to do with Gobert and more to just do with the construction of their lineup. I think their perimeter defense really excels when Cat is at the 5, and they're able to give some more minutes to their really strong perimeter defensive guards that they have on that bench. And I think they might be better off with something like that. Maybe they just not necessarily take Cat out of the rotation, but maybe try to give those guards some more minutes. Just to see how that works. And I just think that when they were not able to have them in the game, Murray and really Murray, Gordon, and MPJ were able to expose it.
Yep, for sure. Weezo, any final thoughts before moving on?
Yeah. So overall, really close, even series so far. Obviously the T-Wolves exposed a lot of problems to the Nuggets. First off, they came in with a plan. They knew what to do. Like you said, they studied up on them. They knew where they had to go and who they had to beat, and they definitely showed those first 2 games. But the Nuggets woke up. They're the Nuggets. They won. They're the reigning champions, and they made it there for a reason last year. The thing is, right now, it's not even necessarily Nikola Jokic that's delivering the damage, and that's what's so hard about this for the Timberwolves to solve. Because if it's these other players, if it's these side pieces like Aaron Gordon delivering the damage, there's only so much they can do. I think it was Rudy Gobert that said today, in regards to Aaron Gordon's performance in the last game, in which he went 11 of 12 for 27 points. If Gordon turns into Kobe Bryant, we just got to live with that. They just need to keep shutting down Jokic, because if they start to focus too much on these role players, then Jokic, the beast, is going to wake back up, and it will not be pretty for them. They need to lean on Edwards' scoring ability and get that defense problem the last 2 games solved, and I think they can pull this off.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we're gonna move on now to the draft lottery, I believe. Yeah, draft lottery. You know what? As a Celtics fan, I haven't had to experience the joy of getting a top 3 pick in the lottery in many years, not many years, a few years now. So I'm going to step aside this segment and push it to Big Mo and Big Mo. Big Mo can take it. I don't want to listen to Weezo ramble about Donovan playing 5 minutes.
My goodness.
Shut up.
Atlanta.
Shut up.
It is time. We are getting a Frenchman of our own. We can finally say the meme that has been going around the minute we got the number 1 pick, we have a Wembanyama at home. All right? The man is being drafted. His name is being called. And now it's just something beautiful. 3%. That's the chance, people. The 3% chance the Hawks were going to get the number 1 pick. The chance at the number 10 pick, which was what we should have had, was about 60-something%. It was the highest percent out of like any team to get a draft pick in the lottery. But no, the odds were in our favor. The computer randomized it perfectly, and we now have a playable center that can mesh to this era of the game. Clint Capella, get out of my team and never come back. Wesley, you could talk about getting the 2nd pick and being a loser.
Listen,
I mean, well, real quick, Weezo. Can we just talk about how crazy it is the Hawks managed to get that number 1 pick with a 3% chance? The odds were plus 3,000.
Talk more. Just say more.
That's insanity. That's
Say
insanity.
more. Say more about it being
Statistically,
crazy.
It's improbable.
it is very improbable.
Improbable.
It's just unfortunate. I mean, I can't be too mad because out of all the drafts out there, where we can get gypped of the number 1 pick, this is probably one of the better ones for that to happen. I would have loved to have Sar on the team. I just don't think that's going to happen now with the Hawks having the number 1 pick. The Wizards, they're in an interesting spot. I don't know quite what direction they might go in. I could see us going in a few different directions. If we want to address some more guard, we could see Nikola Topic, who's looked pretty good out of Serbia. Or if we decide to get bigger and get a center, we could see my very own UConn's Donovan Clingan. I don't think it's going to happen, but that could be a possibility,
Nick,
seeing how we are very precarious at center right now.
Aren't
you precarious at every single position?
No.
Yeah, that too. Nick,
Yeah,
as
any
a
position
fan,
that Bilal Coulibaly is not in, you guys suck. Bilal Coulibaly, you gotta build
Denny
around
Avdija
him,
is
man.
not bad.
Nick,
Yes,
as a
he
UConn
is.
fan, you shouldn't want
A
Clingan to
fifth-year
go to the
breakout.
Wizards.
Great job. What?
Nick, as a UConn fan, you shouldn't want Clingan to go to the Wizards. You'll ruin him.
I'm a big fan.
He's
we
very much
can't ruin him.
Nick, he is a project player. He needs to get stronger and learn how to shoot outside the paint.
He's also like 7'2".
You guys
He'll
can't
be
teach him
fine.
that. You can't teach him that.
He
Oh,
won't
You
be
can't
fine.
teach height. You can't teach height.
Yeah, Nick, you know who else is 7'2"? Mo Bamba. How much playing time he get?
Height is
Carry on.
unteachable, but if you have no offensive talent with that height, then it is very guardable in the NBA.
Yeah, who is scoring
Nick,
for the Wizards?
Nick, you know who else? You know who else is
Bilal
7 foot? Nick?
Coulibaly.
Luke Cornett. Luke Cornett is 7 foot. Nick, look at him. Taco Fall.
I think you should just start Landry Shamet.
Honestly, probably right.
I think they have.
Listen, we're a few years away from success, but this draft, I think Nikola Topic is the right pick here.
I think the Wizards' biggest free agent acquisition in the last 5 years is Tyus Jones.
Kevin Durant will be a Wizard.
At this rate, you never know. He's been
Maybe at
averaging-
75. All right, if that's all we have to talk
That's
about.
That's not all we have. I just wanted to discuss quickly some things in the lottery that were not talked about very much. Houston got the number 3 pick despite having a 1.5% chance at the number 1 pick.
That's true.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy.
So I believe they're projected at like 12 or 13, or maybe even 14. But that was truly amazing to me. And also, Detroit at 5 and Charlotte at 6. I believe those two teams also had the best chance, tied with the Wizards, to get the number 1 overall pick. Both of those franchises are horrendous. Like, just the worst you can get. And now in a draft that is probably the least deep draft we've seen in a very long time, they will not be getting a top 3 pick. So very, very tough for those franchises.
Oh yeah. But you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens because there's a lot of times you never know. You never know. That's the awesome thing with prospects, especially overseas prospects. You never know how they're going to turn out. Carrying on. Let's talk a little hot zone. So we're gonna kick it over to the man who needs no introduction, Big Mo, for the Hot Zone Hot Take of the Week.
Welcome to my Hot Zone of the Week. Welcome to my TED Talk. Today, we are talking now that the Hawks have the number 1 pick in the 2024 NBA draft. Do they take the big man from France and attempt to run it back with Trey and Murray at guards? Or do we draft the Frenchman and we ship off one of these 2 big name players for more draft capital and potentially depth and try to use any free money we have in free agency?
Personally, okay, sorry. Go ahead. No, you go for it. You go for it. This is your hot take. Your hot take. My bad.
So, in my opinion, I was just looking at it the other day. I was with my cousin for Mother's Day, and we were talking about how horrendous his sons were. And I was looking at upcoming NBA free agents, and on contract, coming off of pure non-player or option type players. There's not too many great ones. So I was like, maybe we should just draft the guy and then try to run it back and see what happens. Third time's the charm. With this guard dynamic, it's really not great. But with a big man in play that could play like that offensively, you could see what happens if he's the one you end up drafting. Or we could trade Trae Young and then draft Castle.
So my thought is here, I don't know if getting draft capital for this draft would be that beneficial for you guys. Because I don't know, as good as Trae Young is, if a team really likes a guy like Stephon Castle, I feel like and this could just be me overthinking it, but I feel like they're more likely to take Stephon Castle and have him for, was it in the NBA, 4-year rookie contract with 5 years?
You're guaranteed 8 years actually because of the because you can match any second contract offer.
Right. So I think they're more likely to take someone like Castle, who's going to be cheaper for a little bit longer, so they can try to build around him, rather than getting.
I don't
Trey
think the teams that would be available, or that the teams that could pick Castle, are going to be looking to trade for Trae Young.
Yeah, right.
They are likely contending teams that have
the Spurs,
or that will trade first round picks in the future, and it'll probably be like around 3 to 4 first round picks.
Yeah, I think your best bet, if you're going to move Trey, Max, would be to the Lakers. I could see. I think personally, I think he'd be a pretty solid fit on the Spurs, but I don't think they'll make that move. Personally,
they're a team that could even draft Castle. I think they're at number 4.
Spurs. Yeah, my preliminary mock was Castle going to the Spurs. Just I like that fit. But really, just off rip, top of my head, the only team that really comes to mind that would trade for Trae Young that has the capital to do so would be the Lakers. But even so, that's if they're able to maintain LeBron.
Yeah, and they'd also have to give up. They don't have that many first round picks. They would have to trade first round picks even further down the line.
I think the move for Atlanta would be to trade Trae Young if you're looking to get rid of him. Obviously, I think Max is totally right with you. Get rid of he said Capella, right? Yeah, Capella. You get rid of Capella, definitely, and you draft the big man from France. But I don't know if you're not getting the right package for Trey, don't trade him. And I think the only person that can offer you that package where he'd fit would be LA, but even LA is not going to give you stuff in the immediate future. It's going to be down the road, or they're going to give you some of their lesser role players, maybe Rui Hachimura.
Hachimura, yeah.
Thank you.
And you could also
Or
see
saw, like,
you could
guys
see Austin Reeves in that possibly
Yeah,
too, which
yep,
would be a big
yep.
addition to them.
Oh, huge. They've
Yeah.
been trying to remove D'Angelo Russell as well, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, that might be a bit different. But Capella leaving that lineup opens up a lot of possibilities. He's really the older age of big men. He's basically just like a worse Bam Adebayo. He's a little bit one dimensional. I mean, he's just big. He played well with the Rockets early on when his only role that was needed was to catch lobs and play good perimeter or good interior defense. But he's really a liability for the Hawks. So they need to get rid of him.
Totally agree. So yeah, let's get into it. With our third segment here, I came up with this segment. I thought it'd be a cool idea. So we got 3 questions based on the NFL. 1, what first-year head coach in the NFL will have the most success off the bat? 2, which coach will have the most success 5 years down the line? And 3, which NFL coach will be fired after a poor season? Just total NFL, not just out of the new guys. I'm going to kick us off here. I think the coaches that will have the most success first year, I got 2 guys in mind. One, I think, is a little bit more of an obvious choice, and that is Raheem Morris of the Atlanta Falcons. I think he has a perfect setup down there. I think, Kirk's a good quarterback, and they got a weak division. And I think Kirk's is going to do very well at maximizing their weapons potential, like your Kyle Pitts, like your Drake London, like your Bijan Robinson, and kind of help develop those guys into next level receivers. With that being said, there's some obvious concerns on the other side of the ball, not addressing what they need to in the first round of the draft with like pass rush stuff like that. But I think they will be good. They will be good enough to make some noise. Maybe little 11 games, maybe 10, 11 games, make the playoffs under Raheem. He's not a bad coach. He went down there. He did a pretty good job his first time he was interning after Arthur Smith got fired. No, not Arthur Smith. I'm sorry. Dan Quinn got fired. Yeah, Dan Quinn got fired. He did a pretty good job. So I think he could definitely go down there and do it again. And my second guy, I don't have as good as an explanation for it. It's more of a gut thing. And Weasel will like this one. I think Coach McDonald's over in Seattle could have a lot of potential there because I kind of view him a lot like I don't know, the situation he's coming into. You got the defense didn't look great, right? 22nd in stopping the run. I think they were also bottom 5 in stopping the pass rush. I'm sorry. But you got 2 top 30 corners in the NFL, I'd say, right? And you got a solid defense, a solid foundation that you can build around. And offensively, I mean, that's what his thing is, right? He's an offensive-minded head coach. You got defense. I'm sorry,
defense.
my mistake. Yep. Confused him with Mike. He's the opposite of Mike McDaniel down in Miami. So I think, I think having the weapons on offense already there is a huge start for him. and I think he can kind of elevate that defense to the next level because you got some young guys that can make a little bit of noise,
Yeah.
What are your guys' thoughts? Most success first year?
I'll let Carl go first. What do you think, Carl?
Okay. So in terms of just like improving on the win total the most, obviously there's 2 teams that can only go up. I mean, there's Gerard Mayo from the Patriots and Dan Quinn from the Commanders. I mean, both those teams had terrible seasons last season. Dan Quinn for the Commanders, I think there should be a big culture change there. At least the defensive players love Dan Quinn over in Dallas. And they made a lot of signings. Were they all old and out of their prime? Maybe. But it is still improvements at positions of need. And it may help them now rather than in the future. But they also just had what I think is a very good draft class this past draft. Their best in a while. So I think that they could still have long sustained success, but I think the short term might be more more be there might be a better chance of that. I would say at the top end, maybe 7 or 8 wins is possible for
Yeah.
Washington, and I think 7 or 8 wins is definitely going to happen for the Patriots. I mean, obviously, quarterback is you're not so sure about quarterback, but their defense is phenomenal. They have Christian Gonzalez coming back. They have one of the best defensive tackles or interior defensive linemen in the league, Christian Barmore. They have Matthew Judon healthy. And they could be a bit of a sleeper team this year, especially if Drake May does well and they get a lot more production from their receivers. I believe wasn't Zeke the leading receiver for the Patriots last year?
Yeah.
So they need to get a lot more.
To be fair, though, Hunter Henry, Pop Douglas, and Kendrick Bourne all got injured. Zeke did not.
Yeah, I believe Pop Douglas was second with about like 500 yards. So I mean, they will need to improve, but I think they did a lot in the draft, not really in free agency, but I think they did a lot in the draft, addressing positions of need, especially receiver. They drafted, I believe, 2 out of their first 4 picks were receivers.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
And they were all, and their first 4 picks were all offense. So they know their needs. I think the team really likes Gerard Mayo, and I think he'll be a good fit there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my biggest concern with the Patriots personally, it's not even quarterback. I mean, I got my concerns with Drake May, but I'm a little bit skeptical. It's my thing is we improved our wide receiver room, but when you're at like a high school wide receiver room, you really can only go up. So my question is, how much do we improve, and how much are these rookies really going to step up and play a role? I mean, like right off the bat, you never know it with a rookie if right off the bat if Javon Baker or Jalen Polk are going to make an immediate impact. Weezo, your thoughts? Best setup first year head coach or most success?
All right,
whatever.
This one's gonna piss off Carl a bit, but so this one, it's more up what I think this coach is going to get out of his players and the fact that it's rectifying a past mistake by this organization. I'm going to go with Antonio Pierce by the Raiders, bringing him back. I think this is a really good decision for the team. And the players love him. They'll run through a wall for him. It fits really well with some defensive acquisitions they made in the offseason, especially Kristen Wilkins, who's going to wreck on the inside of that defensive line. There are a lot of holes on that Raiders team. I recognize this. However, I still think they can pull through for around 7-8 wins this year, which, considering how big some of those holes are on the team, I think would be a win on the season. I think this is definitely the keeping Pierce as a coach. It's kind of correcting the mistake they made with Rich Bisaccia, where they went with John Gruden instead of him after that season they had where they went 10-7 and made the playoffs on an improbable run. I'm pretty sure that was the Prison Raiders year, right? But anyway, it just feels like it's kind of like cleansing sins of the past for that franchise, and it really feels like he'll fit in with Raiders culture there.
I mean, yeah, I like that they kept Antonio Pierce. I thought that was the right move as well. I would put him up in my top half of like coaches that could have a lot of success. But to me, he might be a guy that has more success down the line rather than immediately, just because they were unable. They wanted to go in there and they wanted to get Michael Penix Jr. and solve their quarterback problem immediately. And I was a big Aiden O'Connell fan, but I don't think he's the answer either. I think he's your bridge guy.
The thing is, for me, with picking him, the reason I didn't pick him for like the down the line success is I don't know what the Raiders are going to look like down the line. There's nothing set in stone about them for long term, really. That's the problem with that. With other teams, you can kind of get a picture based on their contracts what they're going to look like for the next 4 or 5 years. However, in 5 years' time, Devontae Adams is not going to be a Raider. Max Crosby will be much older. Christian Wilkins' contract will be over. It's 4 years long, I believe. So Who knows what that team will look like by then?
Carl, thoughts?
Well, I don't know why Nick said that I wasn't gonna like this. I mean, I like Antonio Pierce as a coach. I think he's a very good culture fit for the Raiders.
Well, I
And I
know you
don't I
don't
don't
like the Raiders situation. That's why.
well, I think they're a bad organization, and I think the roster is lacking. But I think Antonio Pierce is a good coach that can do a lot with a little. So, and I
Yeah.
think that's a good trait to have, especially considering their quarterback situation. They're definitely going to have to.
The one thing that I think is going to be a real struggle for him this year compared to last year is the loss of Josh Jacobs. That's definitely going to be huge for them because he was practically their entire offense at one point. I mean, the game they beat Patrick Mahomes, they barely passed the ball last year. So it's going to be pretty tough to move on from, but he's going to have to find a way on offense. It could get ugly there, but
Yeah, I mean, we could also see Gardner Minshew play some games, but I really like
yeah.
I like their draft class. I think it was a bit
Mm.
underrated.
Oh yeah, very much love their draft class. Brock
Yeah, I
Bowers is a
mean, a lot
dog.
of people not sure about what Brock Bowers is going to be. He's not Michael Mayer. They are completely different players.
Yeah,
They needed a slot guy, and Brock
yeah,
Bowers could be. He has the potential to be one of the best slot players in the NFL. So,
right. Yeah,
I think he's great there. You got Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers on the outside. You have Michael Gallup and Jalen Guyton for a lot more depth. And their running back room is decent. I mean, it's okay.
Alexander
Um,
Madison, like,
yeah, that's their number two. Zamir White, number one. He was okay.
yeah,
He was decent, better
Zamir's
than I
okay.
than I thought. They did draft an interesting player that I'm gonna have to watch. Dylan Laub from New Hampshire. I'm gonna have to watch him. I've seen some people like him, but their front seven looks pretty good
Oh yeah,
defensively.
yeah.
I mean, Robert Spillane, he was like one of the best interior linebackers in the league last year. He was very, very good. Um, and I mean, their secondary, I don't know,
Their
but
secondary could use help,
but
but
I've seen their secondary do a lot, or them do a lot with a little in their secondary for a long time. So
yeah, yeah.
not
I think
entirely
ultimately
worried there.
culture is going to be the name of the game this year for the Raiders. That's going to be what has to carry them.
Yeah,
Their team
Yeah.
culture.
All right, moving right along here. I'm going to move on to the coaches. Maybe 3, 4, 5 years down the line, have more success than we expect from them. For starters, I think that Jim Harbaugh is a coach to watch here down the line. Obviously, he kind of blew it up offensively for the Chargers here, but he's a good defensive minded coach. And you got some really good pieces on that defense to begin with that he was able to maintain. Derwin James, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. I mean, it's going to be exciting to see what he can do with them. Not to mention, he came out and he said he already wants to establish a more of a ground and pound game rather than an air attack, which is fine. I mean, obviously you got Justin Herbert, so you want to air the ball out. I think that I don't think, obviously, in college, everyone points to how he was at Michigan. It's not going to be like that. You can't run the ball 80, 90 times a game and throw it 3 times. It's not going to be like that at all. It's going to be, he's going to run the ball a lot. They're still going to run the ball a lot. Obviously, drafting Joe Alt was a big sign of that. But, and I mean, you got two, you got 2 good running backs with, it was J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, right?
Yeah, and they also drafted. Oh wait, did they draft anybody?
No, I don't
J.K.
think they did.
Dobbins
No, I
stay
was
healthy
thinking
though.
that the Rams drafted Blake Corum.
But this was also set up a lot of the play action game where they got they got Ladd McConkey now, right? Good separator. They got, I mean, Quentin Johnson looked horrible last year. I expect kind of a little bit more of an uptick from this year, just because I think Harbaugh is going to be good at getting a lot of his guys. I think he's good at getting a lot out of guys who aren't that talented, i.e., like a Roman Wilson or a Cornelius Johnson, if you want to look there. If you guys know who that is. And then the second coach, I like to give 2 options. My second coach that I thought, a little biased here, but I think Gerard Mayo. I don't think this team. I'm a little more skeptical, Carl, a little more cynical. I don't think we're going to go out and get 7, 8 wins this year. I'm expecting more of like a 4 or 5 again, unfortunately. But like I said, I'm a little more skeptical. I could see Gerard Mayo, down the line. The division's going to weaken up in a few years. I mean, it's really just going to be Miami's the only team that's young with talent that's young in the division right now. I mean, outside, you got Josh Allen out in Buffalo. But other than that, I mean, the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is aging. Aaron Rodgers is old. So I think, maybe 3, 4, 5 years down the line, Gerard Mayo could turn this team into a playoff caliber team, assuming Drake May pans out and, your receivers pan out. Obviously, I think, you still need to address the big needs at tackle. We could use a little more corner depth. But other than that, I think, I think there could be a good thing going here. They got some young guys locked up for a while. So we'll see. We'll see. What are you guys' thoughts?
All right, so I completely agree with Joey and the Jim Harbaugh move. I think that one, it could even play out in the short term for the Chargers very, very well. I know early on when they first hired him, I was like, no, please don't take away from Justin Herbert's passing, but they might have to actually win games. They've had a real issue since really for like a long time. I'd say for the last 5 years, closing out games. But especially when Justin Herbert has been there, they've been in a lot of shootouts. They've had a lot of leads late, and they've blown a lot of leads late. So, you know what you go out and do? You draft one of the best tackle prospects probably ever. And you have the best tackle duo in the NFL in Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, pairing them with Zion Johnson, who hasn't been great, but ton of potential out of Boston College. You got Corey Linsley, a very good center, if he can stay healthy. And you also have Jamari Sawyer. So I think that's one of the best lines in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
And a very, very big improvement for them. And, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, I kind of like that running back room more, or plus Kamani Vidal. I kind of like that running back room more than what they had last year with just Eckler and Spiller. So I feel like their offense is much, much improved in that situation. And I don't mind their receiver room. Obviously, you'd love to see a clear one, but I think Palmer can play the X. I think he can play outside. I think DJ Chark can play outside for them. I think Cornelius Johnson can be valuable down the line. He's a super athletic receiver. Definitely needs to clean some stuff up, but he has a lot of potential. And you got
I view him more
Conkey.
of from what I watched from him at Michigan. Obviously, he was a big deep ball guy, but I kind of view him more as a red zone guy just because of how athletic he is right now and for the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. And you also have DJ Chark, who's 6'4" and can really get up there. You got McConkey, who's a great separator and a good blocker. Honestly, their defense is what I don't love. I love Morgan Fox on the inside.
Yeah.
Their defensive or their pass rush is really, really aging. Don't love Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack long term, but obviously they're going to have to address that in the future. Lohai Gilman's good. Sante Samuel, Jerman James, their secondary's in a pretty decent spot.
My thing with Harbaugh is what I watched year after year. I mean, granted, college and NFL are different, but Harbaugh's always able to maximize the most out of his guys in the trenches, offensively and defensively.
You did see that on the 49ers a bit too, so.
Yeah, and you saw it on the 49ers as well. So I'm not too worried about those guys.
Although granted, that 49ers defense had a lot of talent on it too, so.
Yeah, but he's going to love a guy
he was
like
there
Morgan
to develop
Fox.
That.
Yeah.
He's going to love a guy like Morgan Fox, who is a phenomenal run defender. And he's going to probably use him a lot better than the past regime did. Yeah. I didn't really have any other team. I mean, I think another option, which might be Nick's option for long term, is Dave Canales for the Panthers. I like Bryce Young. I do like what they did this offseason. Did they overpay some guys? Yeah. Did they need to do that so Bryce Young doesn't die? Yeah. They need Bryce Young to have time, and they need to have receivers that can get separation. And they drafted a receiver who can get separation, and they signed a lot of offensive linemen to try to block for those receivers to get separation. So, I think their defense is bad. They have Derek Brown. That's really it. And JC Horn if he could stay healthy.
Yeah.
But their defense is bad. I think their offense could take a big step, and Dave Cannell seems to be the quarterback whisperer. I mean, he did it for Baker Mayfield in Tampa, so we'll see for them.
I like him as a head coach there, Dave Canales, but I think that as an organization, the Panthers won't really succeed until they get rid of David Tepper, which isn't going to happen because the guys with the money are never going to be the first ones fired. It's going to be the head coach.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really get rid of the owner unless like he gets investigated by the NFL, unless he's forced out by the NFL. That's exactly really the only way how.
So, yeah, right. I mean, Nick, I think the Panthers. I think. Go on.
No, Nick, I'm trying to move on to who you think's going to be.
Who I think. Okay. So, not to sound biased here, but I think it's Mike Macdonald that down the line is going to have the most success. The Seahawks, especially on defense, are a very young team and a very good. Those players who are young and going to be around for like 3, 4, 5 years are very good. We got Devin Witherspoon. We got Tariq Woolen, despite his tackling woes, who's still a good corner. We have now Byron Murphy, who's a beast on the inside at defensive tackle. And we have some other pieces around the secondary that might perform. I think McDonald's going to get a lot out of in the upcoming years. I'm actually more skittish on his success for this year. I'm not super optimistic about our chances of success this year. Actually, I think we're going to end up with around 6-7 wins total on the year, seeing how with a lot of teams in the NFL went out and improved a lot of their aspects. Well, we actually got worse in some, especially at the linebacker position where we shed a lot of talent in the offseason with both Wagner and Jordan Brooks leaving. I do think that what's going to be key to his success as a coach in the upcoming years is going to be what happens in the post-Geno era. If we can find another young quarterback, if we go out and get a veteran to replace him. I don't know what the future beyond Geno is going to look like in 1 to 2 years. But
got your future. You traded for him.
Yeah.
Sam
Howell. Yeah. You never know. He has signs of talent. If he sits behind Geno for like a year or two, maybe he can be something. Anyway, I'm just really excited to see what our defense will look like in 5 years under his tutelage. Especially Byron Murphy, who I think has the potential to be like an all-time great game wrecker on the inside.
Yeah, I just don't know if a team that has this much talent in the Seahawks, I don't know if they would I don't doubt that they would not fire Mike Macdonald if he only won 6 games. Like in the NFL, we're seeing it more and more that a lot of coaches will only get 1 year. Like, yeah, I think it's better that they get more, but
the thing is, that doesn't really fit.
You have one of the best receiving cores, if not the best receiving core in the NFL. You have a top 5 running back potentially in the NFL. You have a solid quarterback, and you have pieces along the line as well. And it would really be a shame if you guys did not play well.
Yeah, it would be a shame, but I don't think that would result in him getting fired. The Seahawks are a pretty patient organization. I mean, Pete Carroll stayed there for so long. Of course, he was a really good coach for a
They weren't bad, though.
I know, that's the thing. But I think that we are willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, especially with someone who produced such good defensive results on the Ravens. I think we're willing to wait a few years at least to let him build up that defense because we still have some pretty big holes there. Now at safety and linebacker, we're pretty thin. Seeing how Blitz Boy was a complete failure, and our linebacker room currently consists of a half-baked Jerome Baker.
I don't think linebackers matter.
I mean, I don't know. I think that I'm with Carl. I think if he doesn't have like a solid year this year, I think I kind of made a short list of the first-year head coaches that I think could be fired after 1 year. And he was on it. He's on the back end of it, just because I do think you're right. Historically, the Seahawks are a patient organization.
Yeah,
but
if I had to pick a coach that I think could be fired after 1 year, I would say the top of it for me would have to be Callahan on the Titans. I don't know. Something about it just feels like a firing after 1 year, if do bad kind of thing.
We'll transition now into our next segment because I also have a coach that I could see being fired after 1 year. But we'll start with a guy who's been around for a little while. I got two guys been around for a little while, both in the same division, both in Carl's division. I think you know where I'm going, Carl. The first guy, Mike McCarthy. I think he should have been fired this year.
Oh yeah,
and
that's
the year
obvious.
before. Personally, I don't think he should have even been hired in Dallas. I think there were better options. There are better options still for a team, especially a place as lucrative as Dallas, a championship organization, a team that's been built on winning again and again. Granted, they haven't done it in a few years, but
Winning in the regular season.
it's a constant playoff team. It should be a lucrative opportunity for any head coach. But
it's not a lucrative opportunity.
It's a lot of pressure.
Jerry breathing down your spine. Second.
Jerry. Well,
no coach wants to go there.
Jerry's about to kick it into the coffin about 2 years. So if you're a head coach, you could be looking. I think
he's using dark science.
I think McCarthy's on the way out. The second coach I had in that conference was Daboll. He turned Daniel Jones into a very good quarterback year one, and then kind of went downhill. I think if he doesn't have a good year this year, you could see him on the hot seat, or with the way the Giants organization operates, I could see him out the door just because they're very quick to give guys a boot when they shouldn't, in my opinion. Well, I'm not just saying coaches. I'm saying players, office guys, coaches, anything. They get the boot very quickly in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's just I think that playoff win bought him a lot of security.
It depends if he can do that again with Daniel Jones, because Daniel Jones got injured last year.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones wasn't even amazing that 1 year. I mean, they were just able to go around the fact that he's not very good. Had Daniel Jones make very quick reads, and he didn't have to. He was able to use his legs a lot more efficiently rather than just relying on it. So, yeah.
And then the last guy I had, in terms of first year head coach, I could get fired. I kind of have two options. The first one was the Panthers, like I talked about earlier. As much as I like Dave Canales, the way they run that organization, I could see him, if he has a bad year again, getting canned. And the second one was, if the Raiders go out and get 5 or less wins, I could see Pierce getting canned just because he's been the head coach of that team the longest. I don't think that will happen at all, but I'm just saying he has the biggest sample size out of all the head coaches for the team that he's on. Out of all the head coaches right now, I could kind of see him being the guy to get the boot if he has a very poor season.
I could see that, except I think he might not, even if that happens, just because they might be like, oh, he doesn't have there's no quarterback on this team anyway, because that would likely be the reason they would go 4 or 5 wins or so. And then in the draft, they would attempt to fix that. And then if they don't do well that year, then he's cooked. Right.
But this, the Raiders don't operate like that, Nick.
I agree with Joey.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he is probably on the hot seat, probably the most if this team performs poorly. I mean, obviously you could also see somebody like Dan Quinn. I mean, that organization isn't. I know they're trying to head in a different direction, but they're not really known to hold the guys along. Oh, I just think if that team is a dumpster fire, then you could see him leaving, especially because he's been fired before. So
yeah.
But the team that I think two potential head coaches that we could see heading out possibly early is I would say a first one that's been talked about kind of often is the fan base wanted him gone after this year was Nick Sirianni. I think that the Eagles had a really good draft and a good free agency, so we might not see that, but they really fell apart towards the end of last year. And he might not last very long. And then the other coach, a little bit of a dark horse, but also not really, is Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. I mean, you This is really the year where Trevor Lawrence has to prove that he is that guy, and he will be due for a big extension if he is good enough. And it really rides on Doug Peterson and the ability for that team.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. Doug Peterson, he always seems like the kind of guy, who'll get you. He always seems like, he could be better than he is, especially with the teams that he has around him. But
who?
Doug Peterson.
Well, the Jaguars have a good roster, so that's why they were expected to make the playoffs last year and did not. So
well, that's what I'm saying. I feel like he always should do better than he does. Is what I'm saying.
Oh, yes.
Because the only time correct me if I'm wrong, 2017 when the Phillies won, or not Phillies, I'm sorry, Eagles won. He was the head coach, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
they had a very good roster.
That's the only time that he's met.
I think his first year in Jacksonville, they were also supposed to be. They were actually supposed to be like not very good, and it felt like it was a year early that they were good.
Yeah.
I agree. They were bad last year, and they were not supposed to be. So.
Yeah. All right,
so,
Nick, coach that could get fired.
Coach that could get fired. I have two here. One's I feel like a pretty safe bet, and one is more situational. My first one I feel like is a pretty safe bet considering the team situation and the coach is Jonathan Gannon on the Cardinals. I feel like if they get like under 6 wins this year, which is almost a guarantee for that team, I think he's out the door. Kind of used as a sacrificial lamb for a coach to potentially develop a new team because there's barely anything on that team that has talent anymore other than like Maserati Marv. But have you ever seen that picture of the Lamborghini sitting in that really bad neighborhood? That's Marvin Harrison Jr. right now. I feel like that's a pretty safe bet for being fired, regardless of how the season goes. And my next one that I think this one could happen if we don't see some results this year is Robert Saleh on the New York Jets. I think if the Jets miss the playoffs this year, Saleh's out the door. The Jets have been waiting so long to be competitive now. They put so much, they've invested in Aaron Rodgers, putting weapons around him in that defense. Enough is enough at this point. At some point they're going to look at the coaching position and be like, this is the one thing we haven't changed, and we're going to change it now in a last ditch hope that something we can fix this and still have our the contention window open. But I think if he gets like under 7 wins, I think they're cooked.
Yeah, I think for him it could more be a mid-season thing. Like if they start like 2-7 or 2-6, they might try to get an interim coach who's more of a culture guy. If the culture is bad, or
I
like promote
agree.
somebody that's liked, and then see if they can salvage the season.
I completely agree. A lot of the players like Robert Saleh at the moment that I mean, at least that I'm aware of. You never know what goes on in the locker room. Yeah. But I mean, personally, I never viewed him as one of those like top tier coaches that you go out and you pay money for to build a championship team around. I mean, Jets are going to do what they're going to do. And that's my personal opinion. I'm by no means a professional at all. But I totally agree. If Rodgers can stay healthy and they don't succeed, then it's over for Saleh.
Yeah. Especially with this roster. I mean, the Jets have been one of my favorite rosters in the league, minus the quarterback woes for a little while now. So,
yeah.
All right. And before we end today's episode, I'm going to hit you with a little teeny tiny quick worst of the week because we forgot to do it earlier. My worst of the week this week, it's really like worst of the decade, I'd say. It's the Miami Marlins. They just don't like winning, man. We'll go back. What was it? Almost 10 years now. When they blew it up, when they had Yelich, Realmuto, JT. Can't say his last name. I don't know why. Usually I can. Stanton, and whoever else I'm forgetting. They
Ozuna from the Braves.
Yeah. They had a good roster. They blew it up. I mean, it wasn't really working. I don't really remember if they made playoffs or not, but it wasn't working. So for whatever reason, they blew it up.
No, it was because they were bankrupt.
Right. And I can understand that. And then, a few years down the line, you bring in Kim Inge, great GM, phenomenal GM, one of the best GMs of my lifetime in any sport. I love that move by them. She puts together a great team. You get to the playoffs. You weren't supposed to be anywhere near the playoffs. You weren't supposed to sniff the playoffs. And then the next offseason, you part ways with her. Nobody really knows why. They said it was a mutual parting ways. My guess,
It was a power struggle.
Yeah, my guess is she wanted to be able to control who she was bringing in, and the ownership was not going to let her do that. You don't sign anybody but who? Tim Anderson, the ghost of Tim Anderson, who's nowhere near as good as he was.
Yeah.
And then to top it all off, you trade away Luis Arias. And there's rumors of you. There've been rumors all off season of you trading away Luzardo, and rumors are even starting of you trying to trade Sandy this off season or at the deadline, which it blows my mind because you had a good young team. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I completely forgot. There was rumors circling about Jazz last week as well after the Luis Arias trade. It blows my mind that I mean, Grant Jazz, he's not as good as the other three guys that I named, but it blows my mind. You try to blow it up after going to the playoffs, and I know you're sucking this season. I know you are, but you didn't even make an attempt to improve this offseason. You lost pieces, and you got worse. And it's just a shame that Miami fans have to deal with this because, frankly, it's
the problem
downright. It's downright. It's wrong. It's wrong for baseball, especially firing a GM as good as Kim Inge blows my mind to begin with. It's like when the Sox parted ways with Theo. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. What do you guys thoughts?
Well, part of the thing you said, you feel sorry about Miami fans having to deal with this. The problem that we're starting to see now over the past decade even from Marlins baseball is that we aren't seeing Marlins fans having to deal with it because they're just abandoning the franchise. Their attendance numbers have been historically low. They're getting worse and worse over time. They're starting to compete with the Rays for attendance problems. So, I mean, this kind of trading away your good young players, it shows a real disingenuity with your fan base. It shows we are not a serious franchise. We are the Colorado Rockies. We don't care about winning. We just care about having this team for the owners and making money. And go sit your butts in the seat, and we're going to put out the same shit every year that looks horrid and goes absolutely nowhere. Why would anyone want to be a fan and spend money to go view that team? And then that makes the problem even worse because there's less money to spend and the problem just keeps cycling. That's how the Rockies got where they are today, and the Marlins are well on their way.
Carl, any last thoughts before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, I mean, there's no, like Nick said, there's really no Marlins fans. I mean, they did develop a fan base being successful early on in their stint, but since then,
Jeffrey Loria killed it.
Yeah. I mean, they've just been not good,
Yeah.
I understand the Arias trade, just from a right now standpoint, but you don't bring back Jorge Soler after he was very good last season. You refuse to add any help offensively after making good moves at last year's deadline, bringing in Josh Bell, Jake Berger. They did a lot at the deadline, were able to find success, and then they just abandon what they're going to do. I mean, Sandy gets hurt, and they say, you know what? We're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Even with the starting pitching depth they had, it was salvageable. All you have to do is make some good free agency acquisitions, maybe make one trade, and you can put together a competitive roster, but they just refuse to do that.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today on the Zoned In Podcast. We'd like to thank you guys all for watching. Please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and follow all our social media accounts. We appreciate the support, and we'll keep the episodes coming to you weekly or bi-weekly. Until next time, this is Zoned In Podcast, signing off.